So Michael, something I wanted to ask you about was new technologies.
Right.
And like what's coming out there on the market? Where do you see trends going? I mean, particularly I'm interested just in terms of my imagination and, what can we provide our clients in the future, and, what cool things do we want to start talking about and mentioning to them that might not be on their radar yet.
Right, right. Well, I think we already touched a little bit on the Ketra side of things. The idea of dynamic light is so exciting for us. I think the other piece that we love to show people, and I'm sure you've seen this as part of your tours here, is the invisible speaker technology, and generally anything that is an architectural integration of technology. Generally, like I'm kind of my background as an engineer, and when you take things like technology and you sort of integrate them in architecture, there's a lot of choices that you have to make. Like, a really good example of this that's been done very traditionally is you take, a touch screen or an iPad and you actually, embed it in the wall so it's flush, right? And from an architectural standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. But also from a technical standpoint and from the longevity of the bricks and mortar relative to the technology, it may not make sense, right? Because you're making a hole of a certain size.
Right.
But Apple changes that size every few years, right? And so the iPad is a different. So what we try to avoid is when we come to these technologies that integrate, is things that are going to grow old very soon, and force people to make changes in their home that they wouldn't normally have made, because that tends to be like our kind of rule of thumb. If a dumb house has is easier to manage than a smart house, like it needs to be intuitive, but also from the maintenance and all that stuff. So for us, like invisible speaker technology is really exciting because it has its challenges, right? The challenges of installation, because you're integrating the process of the installation with plastering, with painting. Even if our people are doing the cutting in to drywall, you still have to make sure that as everything's finished, that it's not done in a way that eventually will cause problems, right? But when it's done well, the idea that that sound comes from a place that has no visual point of reference is really fascinating.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And the technology works also kind of in a different way, where it sort of spreads, it uses the actual surface of the wall, including the plaster and the paint, as a sort of a vibrational surface similar to a soundboard in a piano or a guitar. And it creates sound that's much more like immersive in a way, like live music, right? When people talk about going to a live concert, and I'm talking about like standing in front of somebody that's playing an instrument and experiencing that, versus even live nowadays, it's like piped over a giant speaker.
Right.
But if you're in front of a musician that's playing, it's a very different experience, because you can obviously see what's going on, but also the sound is much more immersive.
Right.
And these invisible speakers, and they're being made by multiple manufacturers now, which is also very exciting, because depending on the stud width or the architectural details, we can choose different speakers, different manufacturers, even certain ones that have worked behind. You can route out MDF and put a veneer on top.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and you can even do stone. Like I've seen this done behind like a couple millimeters of stone.
Really?
Yeah, and it's really.
And the sound still carries adequately.
It still carries, and of course, like somebody who's a hi-fi listener was going to be sort of looking at this and going like, oh, it doesn't sound as good as these big tower speakers. But as you know, clients have different priorities, and for a client who's just looking for it as background music, a social occasion, a party, you can turn them up. You probably wouldn't choose them for your home theater.
Right.
But for a lot of what people listen to every day, and you're just getting streamed music from Spotify and things like that, it sounds great. And it sounds great, but also provides zero, ceiling acme.
Visual disruption.
Visual disruption is another good way to put it. And really kind of, it creates this sort of execution where, it's a fun game to play, where's the speaker? And you can't tell.
Yeah.
You can't tell, but the music is everywhere and it's around you. And it's a fascinating sort of concept if you can integrate that technology in architecture. So we love that one.
I love it too, because to your point, I mean, it's always been a challenge when you're trying to create, also a beautiful ceiling plane,
Right.
which, frankly, in the past has been very challenging because often you do have such a busy ceiling plane when you're putting in architectural recessed lighting, you're putting in speakers, you have sprinkler heads.
Right.
All of a sudden you have a Swiss cheese ceiling that
Yeah.
is visually, again, sort of disruptive,
Yeah.
not necessarily streamlined and beautiful. And now with these speakers, for example, we can create beautiful ceiling planes. And, again, being a designer who loves working with light and lighting design, I love it.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So that one's like really exciting. I think for us, like we are seeing a bit of a resurgence, I think, in home theater and in listening rooms. And I kind of equate this to as the screens get smaller that we interface with. I mean, the phones, of course, is just constant, and then the tablets. And that's the everyday. Even now, there's essentially the screens in cars and all that. And it's almost like, well, there was this idea that people are just going to listen to it in AirPods. They have spatial audio, and they're going to listen to it. But I think what I've found is and I've found this personally as well as within our client base, is that there's, as much as we can do that so much on those devices, and as much as maybe the teenagers want to do it alone on their devices,
Right.
there's a social aspect to watching. If we think about listening to music, if we think about watching a movie, watching TV shows, my experience is they're much more enjoyable to do together.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And I find that those spaces where we can do that together, they're becoming fewer and further between. But there's more opportunity in a way to make them more special, right? And I think that's kind of why you're seeing a little bit of a resurgence in what I would call sort of home theater, but also sort of media rooms. Because if we are all going to get together, we are all going to watch a movie, we want the experience to be beyond what you'd experience like with your phone and earpods. Not only that we're doing it together, but that it looks great and it's surrounding and it's immersive in a way that you don't get when you're just sitting there with, a device, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's quite interesting because then people have to make some architectural choices, right? If you're going to have a media room, a listening room, a home theater, in a lot of these cases, they're, finished basements that we're able to find space.
Right,
So they don't have to be huge. A little bit more challenging in the city, but it still can be done. I mean, we have...
Absolutely, with good design.
Yeah, exactly.
And good technology.
Yeah, together.
Yeah.
And they make some, cool, like if you can make a hidden space, right? And these are the types of little wow moments, which I think we love for our clients to experience.
Absolutely.
Where you don't think there's a room there, and there is a room there, and it's a listening room for you to enjoy your absolute favorite music, or to watch movies, more of a home theater experience. And it can be for, 4 or 5 seats. It doesn't have to be this very traditional kind of big, plush, huge recliners. I think we're seeing definitely an interest in that because it's something that people have generally put out of their mind. But if they can sit in it and they experience it, and it's like going to the movie theater, but without sitting with 100 of your not so closest friends, right?
Movie theater, but better.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then people really think, oh, this is something that I would like to take that little unfinished space and turn it into.
Well, and I think too, there is a lot of multi-generational living.
Yes.
And in fact, we're moving more towards more of that,
Right.
Especially with economic factors changing and therefore lifestyles changing. I think, we're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing a lot of college kids moving back home.
Right.
So again, what a great opportunity with those multi-generational situations to have that special gathering place.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, COVID being one thing,
Right.
but other factors included have, certainly taught us all that, isn't it nice when you can have that special experience, but in your private home,
Right.
in your residence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that in outdoor living as well. If you have the space to be able to do something that incorporates, audio, even people sort of having projectors that are hidden in benches and that can turn into like a little movie theater around the pool. I mean, some really creative and innovative ideas You know, and that's one of our clients that sort of made that request. And, you know, we said, well, look, the easiest and cheapest way is to just put a big TV up there, right? But visually, they wanted it not to be seen. You know, they didn't want it to feel like a sports bar,
Right, right, yeah.
You know, like these giant TVs that are on all the time. Like they wanted the option to do it and the option to sort of hide it away.